Hi, I'm Logan Medish, and this is High Caliber History. Today I'm at Lewis & Grant Auctions, and I'm taking a look at some of the firearms they have in their upcoming May 2021 Arms and Armor sale. Now this piece here might look like a standard 1841 rifle that gets known as the Mississippi rifle, and it is, and it's not. It is a really interesting story about a conversion of an 1841 Mississippi. So let's talk about this gun and what's going on with it, why it's important, and how it ends up coming to be a conversion arm. In 1858, Congress passed what was known as the Army Appropriation Act, and it was done in an attempt to kind of get with the times in terms of arms advancement. They'd only recently implemented the conversion of flintlock arms to percussion, and European countries, for example, had begun to pass us by in terms of creation and adoption of arms in the breechloading era. And so we find ourselves introduced to James H. Merrill of Baltimore, Maryland, and he was one of the contractors who was selected under this 1858 act. And he was tasked with converting 100 Model 1841 muzzleloading rifles to breechloading arms that used his patented type of breechloading system. As I mentioned before, the Model 1841 is most often known as the Mississippi rifle. And it gets that name from the Mississippi Regiment that prominently carried this arm, and their commander was future Confederate President Jefferson Davis. His connections in the arms world are often overlooked or overshadowed by his involvement in the Confederate government. But he was a military commander, and he was actually an arms designer, had a patent on a few items as well. And so there's a little bit more than meets the eye when it comes to Jefferson Davis. Now this particular Mississippi rifle, as I mentioned, was one of the ones that was converted by Merrill to a breechloading system. Now the gun has markings on the barrel that include the VP Eagle Proof, as well as an AWP mark of Alexander Wenzel Sr., and the stock has a JLR cartouche from John L. Rowe. The guns that Merrill received to convert were all from the Harpers Ferry Arsenal, and they had to be reamed out and sleeved from the original 54 caliber to the larger 58 caliber. Now the guns had already been altered at the arsenal one or more times before Merrill got his hands on them. And it's interesting to note that this particular gun still has its original brass front sight and no signs of any alterations for bayonet hardware, bayonet attachment hardware, as was often done as part of the arsenal conversions. Now, of the 100 guns that Merrill was slated to convert, only 86 of them were delivered. It happens that 14 of the guns were irreparably damaged during the conversion process. Now obviously fewer than that are left today, which makes this a really neat piece of arms development history that'll be available in the May 2021 Arms and Armor sale at Lewis & Grant Auctions. So how exactly does the Merrill conversion work? Let's go over that and talk about what it does and how it has some improvements and some benefits over the traditional percussion design. Now, the Merrill conversion to a breechloading design is interesting because oftentimes when we think of breechloading conversions, we tend to think that the guns are going to be with self-contained metallic cartridges, but that's not the case with the Merrill. This is still a percussion gun. It's just getting the benefit of loading from the breech so that you can load and fire faster than you would with the standard percussion system. And the way this operates is that there's these two tabs that you pull back on that release the hinge mechanism so that you can open up the gun, and it pivots back like this, and that gives you access into the chamber behind the hammer here so that you can load your paper cartridge into the chamber of the gun. And the lockup of this works on this hinged mechanism here. You can see this shelf here interfaces with this shelf down here when the gun locks up. So you have a really tight hinged locking face there that's going to prevent the breech from blowing back onto you. And if for some crazy reason that might fail, once the gun has begun the cocking process to begin the firing process, then that breech block cannot be completely opened by any mechanical means. So for example, with the hammer down, you can open this mechanism here. But if I bring the gun to half cock, the hammer is now in the way. And so you can only bring this up so far. And again, at full cock, it still only comes up but so far. It's still going to be dangerous, obviously, if that were to happen, but at least you're not going to have the gun allowing the breech block to fully open up and expel all of that powder and gas and charge back into your face. So they're definitely working on trying to lessen the amount of injury that you would face should this gun actually fail. So again, you've got this piece of the locking face here, which interfaces with this piece, and they lock together when they go down in, and then it clips together there. So thanks for tuning into this episode of High Caliber History. I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll see you again right here on High Caliber History.